we're talking about a show, a series of short films. What do you point? Oh, there it is. Yeah. that are fantastic. It's like a series of 7 films. Ekam. I've heard it pronounced.
All of those things.
Interestingly, it's make spelled backwards.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
But it's a kind of a philosophical series, which I don't know if you guys remember. A while back, I did a series of reviews of a Polish TV series called The Decalogue, which was similar, in my opinion, very of its time and place.
Okay.
And very much about people, characters, and their relationships to the world, other things, more of a philosophical. They were ostensibly based on the 10 Commandments, but very loosely. Ekam is based on, I think, relationships between people and other people, nature, their status, tradition, religion, things like that, celebrity. And they're very good. They're very fascinating, first of all, in that they depict a different culture than I grew up in here in America, and traditions that I'm not familiar with 100%, but I totally recognize. And people, just the way people are, people are the same everywhere. That's one thing you learn with films. That's why I like films so much, international films from other countries. We feel like these countries are so far away and so detached and so separate from us and so distant and different culturally, and their language is different. But you know what? When you watch movies from those countries, one of the things you realize, they're just like we are.
They are. Everybody wants the same stuff. Everybody has the same emotions. Like, we're all humans. Deep down, that's what it's all about. We have culture that can define some of our actions and beliefs, but deep down, it's all about love and jealousy and fear and, all the same emotions. And so it's just, I guess, how you handle it. So a lot of people create tradition to help give them purpose and structure and, reasons to, believe certain things and do certain things. So a lot of people need that. So this episode sort of takes that to the extreme nth degree, we'll say, of how far do you go to honor tradition? And I think that was an interesting question on many levels that we can all relate to.
But it's not a literal depiction of tradition. It's more of a surrealist depiction of it, because I don't think anyone would go this far. But what it does is some of the feeling, some of the sense that we get from tradition sometimes in certain types of tradition, like religious tradition, or how people devote a part of their life to ideas that may not be completely rational, but they're based on faith. They're based on the idea that there's something more powerful than me that's telling me to do something, and so therefore I must do it whether I understand it or not.
Right.
And some people feel that way. Some people, I think, have grown past that or moved past that feeling of sort of the blind devotion to certain things, and they've kind of reached a compromised devotion. I mean, they may still be very religious, but they wouldn't go this far. The story is to me, reminded me of surrealist art that I've seen, like Luis Buñuel, filmmaker, who worked with Salvador Dali and made a film that's one of my absolute favorite films of all time, called Exterminating Angel, which basically puts people in an absurd situation that couldn't, you can't imagine this happening in real life, but it's based on a kind of reality. People in Exterminating Angel, people are trapped in a room, and it's never explained overtly why they're trapped, why they can't just walk out of the room. They simply can't. There's one scene where there's a door over there and there's a window over here, and they can't get to the door because they can't go out of the room, right? And there's a woman who says, what we could do? We could smash that window and we could get out through the window. And a guy next to her says, that's stupid. There's a door right there. And she's like, oh, you're right. And then they go back into and they're like, how are we going to get out? I love kind of absurdist thing. It's not reality. It's a painting, an abstract painting of reality.
Right.
And this short film called Tradition in the Ekam series is like that. It's a funeral procession. They're building a funeral pyre where someone is going to be cremated on the shore of this river. And as they're walking to this funeral procession, as they're going to the funeral, they realize that the person who is dead is actually not dead. He's with them. He's walking with them.
Yeah, and he's kind of like, "Who's the fire for?
Yeah.
What's going on?" "Oh yeah, that's for you."
But
"Oh, yeah."
instead of going, oh, we don't have to have the funeral, we can go back. You're alive. How great. They have a different reaction. They're basically like, well, we have to have this funeral.
We have to. We just have to.
So unfortunately, it's very sad for you, but we have to go ahead and go through with this because it's tradition. What would and I love the character, the uncle character. He basically says, what would people say if we did all of this and then didn't have a funeral?
That's right. It'd be
And the young guy
scandalous.
is like, but no,
It'd be so embarrassing for everyone, including you.
but it's like a bad dream in a
Yeah.
way where
It's like,
you
it's
feel.
not really gonna happen. I mean, they keep saying that I need to be in the funeral, but I'm not dead. So yeah,
And he's like, I don't want to do that.
yeah,
Why should I? He doesn't really ask why. He just basically is like, I don't want to. I don't want to be burned on the pyre.
Nope.
And everybody else is like, well, there's really no other choice. I mean, there's nothing else that we can do. I mean, what can we possibly do?
Yes, exactly.
This has to take place. I mean, what are you saying? And in that way, it's really fascinating. I think it's fascinating filmmaking where you have people, really great actors,
Mm-hmm.
who are in a situation that is absolutely absurd.
It's not good. And this is directed by Sanal Aman and Sarup Elaman, and it stars Prakash Raj, who a lot of people already heard of. He's a pretty distinguished actor in India, and he was in KGF 2, and he's a big deal. I recognize him when I saw him. So he's kind of the main patriarchal kind of figure who's pushing the traditional. This is what we have to do because that's tradition, and this is just how it works. It's like there's no questioning it. It's just how it works.
Right.
What I liked about this was it was almost like it's like kind of a cat and mouse where it's very contained. It happens basically. There's two locations. One is the beach where the pyre is that they're all going to, and then there's the forest where they're in the forest talking about it. And they're all there's almost two sides. Like there's him over here, and they're talking about him over here. It's almost like a committee's talking about what should be done. We have the family come in, and they're trying to appeal to him with that. But I love the kind of cat and mouse of like, how do we convince him? What's the basics for convincing him to do this? What's the outcomes? How do we? So it was really contained and basically just discussion. The whole thing is basically discussing to him why or why not you need to be at this funeral, even though you're still alive. And I love that idea, or not alive, but not dead. Apparently, we don't even know. See, that's another thing let's discuss, because you brought up a really good theory about this. Like I thought it was just tradition pushed to the extreme where, because this is how it works, if someone is considered dead, even if they're not, they still have to be put on the pyre and burned because they're supposed to be dead. That's just how it works. The tradition, the pyre's there. You have to. Yeah.
You have to go ahead and have that funeral.
You have to have it. You have to.
But I was thinking, when I was watching this, there's also another tradition about ghosts and spirits.
I love this theory.
Not being ready to die.
That's right.
And you hear that kind of story. I mean, American film version of that might be Sixth Sense, where someone, where the little boy says, there's people who are dead and they don't know it, and it's like, what if this young man was actually dead, but this was his way of not accepting it. I'm still, he still wants to be alive, and so he goes down to the thing, and he kind of basically during the funeral procession, his spirit is there, and he's kind of imagining the reaction of the people to the fact it's like he can't accept that he's dead, so he must therefore still be alive. So he must be there among these people, and this is how they would probably react, because there's really no way out of it. The way they were talking to him, there's no other choice. There's no other way out of it, which made me think the reason they're saying that is because you are dead, So
they have to make him remember by putting him on the pyre, so he goes through the funeral, so it convinces him that he's actually dead. Or it could just be a total skewering of the idea that tradition shouldn't be the decider for all of our choices, and that sometimes tradition is wrong, and sometimes you need to find other solutions than just going, well, that's the way we've always done it. Well, too bad. I mean, he shouldn't have to die on the pyre. You just made a mistake, but it's like the mistake was a bigger deal than actually killing someone. So there's like a bunch of ways that can be read that are really, really a cool storyline through and through. In general, just either of those solutions. I love the ghost idea. I think that's great. But I also thought it was really hardcore to actually have this go through and actually have him do the funeral. Like, it's like, well, I cannot believe they're going this far. Like you're rooting for him to get out of it. And when he doesn't, you're like,
but there's a kind of sadness. I like the way the young actor, the young man who is, dead,
yeah,
played the character. He was just so
yeah,
devastated by this that was
yeah,
happening, and it was almost like he just. And if you follow the spirit theory, his gradual reaction to it, and eventually he does get on. He
yeah.
gets up there. Basically, like he finally realizes
Very harsh.
that's where he belongs, that he is
Yeah.
dead. Because there's a sad scene, a really sad, heartbreaking scene where his wife comes, and
Hmm.
you think that his wife is going to just grab him and say, no, you
Yeah.
can't take my husband. But
I know.
no, she says, it's going to be terrible for me and the children to be alone. But what other choice
What
is there?
choice?
What
We
other
have
choice do we
to.
have?
It has to
There's
be
no other
done.
way.
Oh,
Yeah. And
God.
it kind of almost Kafka-like in a way. If you read some of the Kafka stories, like especially Metamorphosis, where
Yeah.
there's a sad scene, and if you've read Metamorphosis, which you should have, it's a short book, you can read it, it's a classic. And it's another absurd situation. A guy wakes up one morning, he's been turned into a giant sort of cockroach, and
Yep.
it's sad because his family basically says, well, yeah, I mean, he's a big roach now. He's a big cockroach now. And there's a sadness to it, him having to accept that.
Yeah.
This is what he is now. And of course, there's tons of metaphor of somebody feeling that way. I mean, there's some times in our life where we feel terrible and gross, and we feel like we're, especially when you're younger and you feel like, God, I'm not like these other beautiful kids. I'm not good looking. Nobody loves me. Nobody wants to hang out with me. You have those, self-doubt feelings and those sad, melodramatic teenager feelings. And in a way, this short film shows this idea where, you're not in control. You're not,
No.
You could wake up one morning and realize you're a giant cockroach, or that people think that you don't deserve to be alive because of tradition.
That's right.
And you have to do this. You have to. And there's all those things about growing up to becoming an adult. You have to do this.
You have to.
And it's almost like the child part of you dies when you become an adult, and you have to start paying the bills in grown-upville. And in a way, this kind of relates to that too. And I think Kafka was going there too with some of his stories of this is how the grown-up world works. It's absurd and it doesn't always make sense, but you have to pay your bills. You have to pay taxes. You have to grow up and accept these horrible things that are going to happen as you age.
That's right.
And this young guy, eventually, it's a heartbreaking scene where I think it was with his wife. You see it in his face where he's like, okay,
I guess I will have to do it. I know, it's really sad. I was hoping for a turnaround, like a modernization, like resisting tradition, because it's not in your best interest and it's not in anyone's best interest technically, but they're just falling into this man-made belief, this man-made structure of what is honorable and what isn't, like who decides, for you. And so I thought that was pretty powerful.
It's really powerful. Yeah. And the uncle character at one point, there's another really powerful moment, I think, where he's trying to convince this young guy, you have to do this. There's no other way. And he's like, what will the people say? The people in the village, they're going to talk if, he said something about their tongues will be wagging. And it's like, who cares?
Who cares?
This is a human life.
Yeah. So people are going to be talking. Who cares? I know. But to them, honor is above all the most important thing. And so they didn't want they thought you are being selfish with your own needs by bringing dishonor among all of us if you don't do this. And you're like, well, then too bad. I'm moving out of town. Find another place to live who doesn't know me. I don't know. I was excited that they didn't pull their punch and that they went through with it, but I was also sad that they didn't pull their punch and had me escape. That's technically what I wanted to have happen. I wanted it both ways. So yeah,
see him jump in a helicopter and fly away or something.
Exactly, but like Rick on Walking Dead. Exactly.
Right. But the other thing I want to mention about this is the performances by all the actors. When you're in a story like this, it really does have it's surrealist drama. It's like I mentioned, The Exterminating Angel and other stories kind of like that, Kafka type things. It's difficult for performers to pull it off, to stay committed in a story that takes place in a kind of an absurd situation, because nobody in there, no rational person is going to say, oh, you're alive, oh well, sorry, we still have to kill you because we have to have a funeral. Real people would say, "Oh, you're alive? How great. Cancel the funeral. Let's have a
Yay, we
party.
can call it off and be glad that you're still
You're
among
not
us.
dead. We thought you were dead. It's so
Wow,
great that
it's
you're
a
not dead."
miracle. But
It's
instead, it's
so
like, "Oh,
cool.
dude, you gotta die." That's all the
Yeah.
way that's all there is
We
to it.
have to follow through with the tradition.
It's so scary. I know,
So
it was a
actors,
really it was really
when
good.
actors do portray characters that are having absurd reactions to reality,
Yes,
that's hard to pull off.
really hard.
But the lead actor, the guy who plays Uncle, he's so good at that.
So good.
You really sense this gravitas in him, where he's
Mhm.
going up to this guy and saying, this must happen. This must take place.
He's a
I'm
great
sure you
actor.
understand. You have to understand.
Mhm, yeah.
Don't you
"Don't
understand?
you get it?"
Yeah.
It's like, "No, I'm the one dying here. I don't
Yeah,
get
and
it."
then the young guy was so great too, because it was almost like you get a sense in his
Yeah,
performance that he's trying to understand.
yeah.
He's trying to parse this out with tradition and his love of being alive,
Yes.
and doesn't compute, but in this surreal world, in this, like with Exterminating Angel, I love the
Mhm.
performances in that too, where people just, they're like the woman saying, "Oh yeah, you're right, there is a door right there. It's so
Yeah,
stupid to break the
but
window."
yeah,
And
I
then
guess
she
that's
goes
true
back and
because
sits on the couch, and it's like, we're
yeah,
starving to death in here.
they still don't leave.
Yeah, it's like we're all going to
It's so
starve. How are
funny.
we going to get water?
What are we
And
gonna
they end up
do?
chipping holes in the wall looking for water pipes and stuff. And it's like,
So funny.
rational people are
Yeah,
saying, "Go out the door,
let's leave.
leave the room." But that's not an option
No,
in this
no,
world. And him living is not an option in
nope.
this short film.
Has
So
to be done. That's the way it is.
I
Everyone's
love
trapped.
that kind of story when it's
It
done
was very
right.
cool. Yeah, it was really well done. So, highly recommend this series. You
Yeah.
can see Tradition and 6 other films if you just subscribe to this service, and then just click the link in our description, and you will go right to it, and you can sign up and see 7 films, 7 great films.
Yes.
So,
And you
highly
get all
recommend.
their scripts. You can read the scripts. You
Yes,
can read the show outline, what
so
they
much
call the
good
show
stuff.
Bible. You
Yes.
can see interviews and behind the scenes stuff. It's a little community. It's really cool. It's totally
It's
worth
a
$4,
movie
guys.
fan and
Yeah.
filmmaker dream where you get to see all the behind the scenes, you get to see how indie films are made, and just the thought and the well-meaning, creatives that went into making these things happen is really great, and I love
Yeah.
this sort of experimental, like, its own streaming service, so it'd be
Yeah.
great if we can do season 2 and have even more short films, so I'm hoping this catches on, so that's why we're promoting it, because I love anything that gives you more access to more filmmaking. It's just the way it should be.
And if you're a screenwriter, if you're a filmmaker or a writer, a prose writer, any kind of
Yeah.
storyteller, if you write graphic novels, if you draw comic books, you can learn from the
Yeah.
storytelling techniques that are used in
Yes.
these films. There's a lot of really brilliant camera work,
Yeah.
the
So good.
choice of how to show people when to leave the camera on someone,
Yes.
when to cut away, how to
Mhm.
show things. There's a lot of interesting framing. In some other episodes that we'll be talking about, there's
Right.
moments where we're seeing everything through a framing device.
I
And
love that.
in this one, in Tradition, there's a lot of choices in how things are shown, as far as how the idea that's being put into the scene
Mhm.
by how we're seeing it and
Yeah.
who we're
Like,
focusing on.
who's the camera? What's the perspective? Like, who's watching this besides, like, we're kind of in a way the kind of,
Yeah.
like, eavesdropping on this
Yeah.
moment that's happening. So the camera makes you feel really like you're sort of skirting around them and listening in on something you're not supposed to be hearing. And it was very, very well done.
Yeah, and lots to interpret too. There's scenes where they're building the pyre, and at
Yeah.
one point something happens, and they have to completely disassemble this wooden
Yeah.
pyre.
He sees a snake crawl out of it or something, which I
Yeah,
guess is bad luck or something, and he was like, "What'd I do?"
or
So
maybe it's bad luck to kill a cobra, so we have to make sure there's not a cobra in here or
but it's
something.
okay to kill an innocent person who's not dead.
Right, exactly.
It's like, okay.
So they go to the trouble of disassembling the whole thing,
It's
and
tradition.
then they assemble it again,
That's just
and
unquestioning belief in something that
yeah,
makes no sense.
yeah.
So, yeah, great stuff. So be sure and leave comments. I would love if people you watch these and give us your idea, your thoughts on how much of this was real, how much of it was kind of supernatural or not supernatural. Tell us more about it. Maybe even more cultural context into what
Yes,
was
tell us
happening
the
there. Would
cultural
love to hear
context.
that. Yeah.
Absolutely. We'd love to hear from anyone who
Yeah.
lives, in this area or in
Yeah.
areas that have traditions like
Mhm.
this. And what do you think this is saying about tradition? Is it,
Yes.
is it is controversial
Mhm.
or not? Is
All right,
it
tell
kind of
us.
an indictment of that kind of thing or not?
Would love to hear the deeper meaning. So be sure and
Yes.
comment. We'd love to hear about it. And make sure you keep watching our series of reviews on Ekam. All right.
Yes.
Catch you guys later.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.